This guy, Dominic Hackle, has made a game. It is called, I think, Summit. And he's been making it for about 4 years. If you take a look at his very first devlog, number 1, building a Metroidvania in Unity. Indie game development log, number 1, 4 years ago. And you can see that over time the game developed. This might be a bit too bloomish, right? And now he has released it, but unfortunately it failed. This is what it looks like at the moment. Okay, 5 user reviews. That is not a lot. That's definitely not enough. And it's released on the 28th of April this year. If I were to take a look without the video, what I can say is that there's not enough contrast or separation between the topmost layer and the background. It looks kind of cheap that way, and it's difficult to tell apart what is actually part of the frontal environment and the background. However, I don't know the mechanics of the game. Oh, 2023 even, so it's over a year now. Oh wow, that's even worse. This is how no marketing games look like. Now, I don't know, bro. We'll see.
Last year, end of April, I finally decided to launch my indie game Summit, a 2D mountain climbing Metroidvania I've worked on for 3 years. I started working on the game in early 2020, right at the start of the pandemic. Initially, I made a lot of progress. I tried YouTube devlogs the very first time, and they actually did decently well.
Yeah, they did.
Which gave me the motivation and momentum
13,000 is a lot.
Then, of course, reality set in, the scope of the game grew in size, and I had to split my time between multiple projects. In short, the game fell into a state of development hell. So last year I posted this video where I explained all of this and my realization that if I don't release the game right now, it will likely end up rotting away on my hard drive. So why not take one last effort to polish and then release it on Steam.
So there's no actual gameplay?
It wasn't a completely silent launch. I mean, the game still had some exposure through my YouTube devlogs and trailers.
To be honest, 13,000 over 4 years or 4,000 over 4 years is nothing. Like, it's the occasional view. That's really nothing in terms of exposure. If it was 13,000 over, let's say, a week, that's a lot. However, over 4 years, you gain a subscriber here and there. Like, speaking from experience, I have released devlogs at the far edges of the universe, and you sometimes get a view, but it's not really called exposure. Exposure is something that happens consistently. You consistently gain that many amounts of views over a month. So what is that for him? Over 4 years, a couple of views a month. It's nothing, essentially.
And
why do we could take a look, right? He has quite a few subscribers now because of the latest video, which is 100,000 views. So take these 100,000 views and subtract them from what? This number right here, 700,000. So over, oh God, how many years is that? 10, oh God, I'm bad at math. So it's 15 years, he's managed to collect 600,000 views. And if you take a look at his videos, popular, most of these videos, this one doesn't count, so subtract another 300,000 from that. So we are at 300,000 views over, let's say, a period of 3 to 4 years at this point. 300,000 views is not that much. That is what Animal Well. Look at this. Animal Well. And then Gamedev Donkey. Well, it's not Gamedev. It's Game Donkey, right? Game Donkey? Something. Video Game Donkey, yeah. So, like, compare that to Animal Well that got a whopping 1.6 million views 3 weeks ago. And not only that, you know, there's more views over here. So it's not really much exposure over a long period of time. It's what I'm saying, right? I think he got tricked into that. But essentially, if you just summarize the devlogs together, that's maybe, yeah, 50,000 views on the devlogs. At most, maybe if we are being generous, 100,000. But I don't think so. you know. 50,000 to 100,000 views on a devlog over 4 years is really nothing. And I could speak from experience because I have the same. Anyways, so yeah.
Topping 1,000 wish lists on Steam, but of course I was fully aware that without proper marketing, there wasn't going to be a lot of people playing the game.
Without proper marketing.
On the day of my launch, I prepared everything on Steam, uploaded the final build, set the launch discount to 40%, and...
Wait, people do that? A launch discount? I never heard about that. Why would I do that? 40%? That seems awfully high. Like maybe 10%? Palworld had one? Yeah, but it was 20%. It wasn't 40. You should do that, not 40% though? Yeah, like maybe 20 at most. 10. Yeah, something like that. 10 to 20. They didn't have 40%, absolutely not. I remember it being 25 or 20 instead of 25, something like that. But not like half the price. Absolutely not.
Finally hit the release button. Whew. Game is shipped. So, how are we doing? Well, as expected, not much happened. There were a few wishlist conversions. There were like...
Someone's at the door. Fuck! Hate being interrupted, man. I fucking hate being interrupted! Okay. Relax. I think the title is, the thumbnail is actually quite nice. It does... Are you fucking kidding? I'm getting called on the phone? Are you I have to quickly go downstairs. So what I was saying. The thumbnail does look kind of nice, I have to say. Maybe not perfect, but it basically gives the idea of climbing up a mountain and reaching the summit. So basically, yeah, climb the daring mountain passes. So basically it's a game about climbing up, which, you know, it's just a side scroller that everyone knows, right? Celeste is something like this. So yeah, looking good.
Not
so far.
Much happened. There were a few wishlist conversions. There were like 2 negative reviews. Neither was really a scathing review. Both actually had...
I really wanted to like this game because it's beautiful, but in a game where you are climbing a mountain, I would expect the ledge grabbling mechanic to actually work. 50% of the time my character would not grab a ledge and I'd fall to my death. I'm not sure if I'm just bad or if it's a game issue, but it proved to be more frustrating than anything. That's not nice. That's not good. This game is actually very polished for a game made by only one person. It's quite challenging. You have to roam the big map a lot in order to progress. People don't like that a lot. If you have to roam a big map. It features some pretty tough boss fights too and is littered with secrets. The soundtrack is amazing and NPCs were very cute. The ambient design is very coherent. This has got to be a friend of his.
Had some nice things to say about the game. So I guess it's time to finally reveal the sales numbers, right? Well, since last year's April...
He should go into details on like why he thinks the game is good or bad, but maybe he does. Lessons learned. Okay, fine.
The game has...
My man, thank you. Asdoni, I appreciate it, bro. I'm not gonna play your donation now, bitch. You tried to interrupt me, no. Yeah, I thought you were nice, but no. You were actually trying to be toxic. No, thanks for the $3.
Made a grand total of...
Wait, I'm gonna say it! Shit, I didn't see it. Ah, fuck.
$326 Steam net revenue.
Okay.
Which after deducting Steam's 30% cut translates to an hourly rate of approximately 15 cents.
That's my YouTube rate, guys. In the very beginning. 10 hours of work for $1 of outcome. Nice.
So in the end, this whole situation is really not that dramatic to me. I had a blast working on the game and gained a ton of knowledge and experience. Okay. Still, since my goal for the future is to create awesome games, ideally in a profitable and sustainable way, it is important to analyze what worked out and what didn't.
Okay.
So let's go through some of the biggest reasons I think my game failed.
Alright, let's see. Platformers are a crowded market.
But also in particular, Metroidvanias are among the most popular genres for indie developers. There's a big group of people who enjoy these kinds of games, but there's also a tremendous amount of games competing for these people.
Yes.
I think
How do we know that? Well, we learned this in the other video. How about we apply that? Gamesstats.com. If we find Metroidvania, actually not really that bad. It's 2,000 games, 790 million in revenue, but 50% earn... I hate this table. Can you like only search for a couple of tags? Right side has only become Patreon. Advanced. Oh, I see. So it's pay to win. Ah, I need to pay to win to use this. All right, we close this. All right, fine. Okay. Fine.
Mountain climbing setting of Summit is still quite unique in the realm of Metroidvanias, but it's still incredibly hard to stand out without having a really unique twist or art style. Speaking of art style...
Yeah, your art style is not really... Like, the art style is... Like, listen, look at this. You're first and foremost, like, maybe I'm wrong, right? First and foremost, what I can see from this game, I think it's Ori and the Blind Forest, right? You have stuff in front here that is blurred out. Then you have a very clear indication of where to go. And a nice separation with the back layer using blur and what do you call that? Washed out. I don't know how you call that in English, but it's washed out. That's not his game, dude. I know, it's Ori and the Blind Forest.
I am primarily a programmer, and when working solo, artwork has always been one of my pain points. Over the years, I developed this kind of flat vector art style, often mixed with some texture overlay for more detail.
Unfortunately, I've seen this graphic in even worse before, and people do complain about that. Yeah, it is not that aesthetically pleasing, unfortunately, even if you add a bunch of blue. It's bland, yeah. Unfortunately, that's just the reality. Nico is a German game developer that has made a tower defense game. And he has made similar graphics to the grass here. And unfortunately, this style, it's even worse here. And like, what I wanted to point out is, like, I don't hate Nico. I don't want to shit on him at all. We've talked about this. He also knows about the art style of his game not being great and all, right? He knows that. Yeah, there's a lot of reviews or many people complain about his art. And unfortunately, if you have a unique art style, it has to work and make sense. And not look, I don't want to use the word, but shitty. Or basically not look, I don't want to say shitty, but not look amateurish. Okay? And unfortunately, this is what happens here and what I see here too. This looks amateurish, unfortunately. It might be the colors. It might be too many pixels, too much noise here in the grass. It might be many things. It's always difficult to tell with art to know exactly what it is unless you have a lot of experience. But what I can tell from my experience so far, it looks amateurish because maybe this is too bland here and then this is too noisy. The contrast between the two is really weird. So yeah, unfortunately, man.
Because of the huge game world, I had to optimize my art creation pipeline as much as possible, which resulted in a bit of a quantity over quality mindset. I, for myself, knowing my skills and workload, am honestly rather proud of how the art in many areas turned out.
Yeah, I would be too.
I'm also
Some
fully
stuff
aware
really
that
looks good.
it doesn't hold up against other games with dedicated artists
unfortunately,
who knew what they were doing. As a result, I'm sure a lot of people see the game and think it looks kind of
cheap.
Boring or
no, not boring,
ugly.
But cheap.
So I think my learning for the future is to develop an art style that really stands out while at the same time being simple enough for me.
It's too much fucking brown. He'd do well bringing the grass down. You mean bring the grass down in what way? Gives a blank, sticky feel. You mean this grass right here, right? Not the leaves. What about core defense then? Fine, let's compare this to core defense. That's a game that was actually kind of successful. Let's take a screenshot. Sorry, bro, but it's like worlds already. It is still, the art style is not perfect, obviously, right? It's not that inviting, but what I can tell already, it's clean. Look at the bar in the bottom here. What do we see? Well, we can clearly see a separation, a nice separation of wave, mobs, speed up. My face is in the way. Then some other stuff, some other button and options. And then here, it looks like our abilities. And then over here, he uses very few colors. He uses orange for the enemies, blue for his stuff, and blue for the walls. And then a darkish background. It is looking quite nice. You can see a very easy separation. It isn't noisy at all. Maybe a tiny bit, but it's clear what's happening here. The orange dudes running towards... Maybe this base should have been a different color, but he kept it blue as to align himself with... Well, blue is my stuff. Orange is the enemy stuff. And here the same. Purple and orange. It looks really clean. Like, now we compare this to this. Sorry, but it's words. Point being that there's a clear separation. This art style, while cheap, is much better. Looks like technology art style. Really cool. Unfortunately, it's much better than this. Very noisy. Can't really tell separation very much. Obviously, blue and green, but they are the same saturation. They're both very desaturated. Dark. It doesn't really work. While these guys have a shadow, it's not noticeable. You don't even notice the shadow in first glance. Not the shadow, sorry. A light around them. You see that? It's a bit brighter around them to make them stand out a bit more. But even if you squeeze your eyes, the image looks still flat. Right? If you squeeze your eyes here, you can clearly see, I can make out these very well, and the towers as well. They're very bright. You could tell immediately, okay, this is something here, and this is something here. That's what I see, and this guy too. Unfortunately, and if I squeeze here, it's almost the same, but it does look a little bit better. Anyways, let's get back to the video. I think his art style, unfortunately, is a bit bland. Right? Washed out, like what we talked about earlier. Too noisy, looks muddy, right? It doesn't really create a nice contrast, unfortunately. And that's very important. You can have very cheap and easy sprites, but they have to create some sort of contrast. The colors do need to make sense.
So I think my learning for the future is to develop an art style that really stands out while at the same time...
He should learn color theory. This is color theory too. He's using... What helped me a lot, and you guys, I know you guys hate it, but I think what helps a lot in these situations, limit yourself with colors. Limit yourself to a certain amount of colors and try to create contrast and visual separation with a limited amount of tools so that you can, this is called retro, but you don't have to go retro. You can, let's say, use only 20 colors and then try to, use an existing color palette, for example. And then that color palette has 20 colors. That helped a lot. It helped me choose fewer colors for shading and highlighting and choose colors more wisely to create awesome effects, right? Look at the clouds in the background here. That's 2 colors. 2.
Time being simple enough for me to execute at scale. There are some obvious examples of games which might look ugly.
So for example here, right? This you think might looks ugly, right? But it's not, because it has a very nice contrast and the colors are actually chosen very nicely. It looks weird, right? You would not do this in pixel art, but still, it works because it looks actually beautiful.
At first sight,
it looks ugly,
but actually in a charming way that really stands out. The way I structured my game is that you start with a really basic moveset and get access to all of the awesome moves and abilities only later in the game. Of course, this is what most Metroidvanias are doing, so often these types of games tend to have a rather slow start, which can be a problem if you're not a household name and have at least some level of trust from players to hold on. My game...
He doesn't go into reviews at all. What about the hook that the guy talked about? The hook not landing on the edges and he
takes
feeling like a
well
bug.
Over 10 hours to complete at first playthrough. But I know that not a lot of people made it past the first hour, which is a shame and
then
really
you
shows
need to take a look at that. No, you
is.
need to take a look at that part of the game and understand why. He should send some examples. Hopefully he does.
Focus on the first impression and make it as awesome as possible.
Yeah.
Speaking of focus, As a player, I love vast game worlds with tons of stuff to explore, so naturally I wanted to replicate this feeling in my game, which is not the wisest thing to do as a solo dev. Filling a huge world with beautiful art and interesting things to do is something that
you should
just
make a small
requires
world.
Manpower. There is no real way around
Is this a
unless
scam
you're
center?
working with procedural generation or probably sooner or later generative AI. As a small indie dev, the one thing you don't have is manpower, so you have to play to your strengths. For my next project, I would really like to focus on one single mechanic or concept and go into crazy levels of detail with that. I think it's a lot easier.
So essentially, basically build an interesting and polished system.
To compete with
and
bigger
make that
games
as fun as possible
than if you try to outperform them in terms of sheer content. If I were to build a game around space exploration, for instance, I wouldn't want to compete with Starfield by making my world as...
Starfield, really? It's a dog shit game, bro. He's looking at the wrong games, man. You don't look at Starfield
and creating thousands of assets.
You need to look at No Man's Sky,
by
bro.
focusing on a single aspect of space exploration and making that one 100 times better than in Starfield. We can see this in a lot of successful indie games, which really go all in on one single creative idea and build the entire game around that.
On the bright side,
was a big passion project for me.
That's
As a
cool.
player, I've always loved 2D platformers, especially the Metroidvania formula. So I really wanted to see how far I can take my skills as a game developer and make one of my own. Naturally, since this was my first game project of a larger scale, mistakes were made, time investment was underestimated, and feature creep was very real.
Holy shit, he drew
Still,
that?
From the start, I never expected to make a ton of money. I never worked on it full time and was never financially
I guess
dependent on its
as a side project,
so I just thought it would be a cool learning experience.
Yeah, it is.
Which turned into a little bit more than that. While it probably would have been better to make a few more smaller games for learning.
4 good devs make 4 games in 44 hours. Okay.
Before starting on such a big one,
make 4
I
games.
don't regret it. In fact, I think there are several things that you can only learn in a project of a certain scale. There's a huge difference between...
Art has to be readable, gameplay is king, yes. You can make a game like this if it's readable. Exactly.
A working prototype with a test level and turning it into a fully realized game with a large world. At the very least, I can now confidently say that I know how to create a fully fleshed out game with a big interconnected world containing well over 10 hours of gameplay, running on a smooth frame rate, and all that with a somewhat clean code base that would be fairly easy to expand or reuse. In the end, I got a taste of what it means to commercially release a game, and I saw that by fixing some of the mistakes I made and improving on what already worked, it might actually be possible to release a profitable game in the future.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm currently in the process of finding ideas for my next game project. My goal would be to create a smaller project next for a little change, and after that I'm ready to tackle a bigger one again.
Yeah,
maybe even
small,
of the scale of Summit.
A small game is really good if you do that, just to like iron down the process.
Currently have a huge stack of paper full of game ideas lying around on my desk. I just really like collecting those
ideas. So this is a little worrying for me. Like he has all of these different ideas. To me, this sounds like he's just, what am I gonna do now? What type of game am I gonna do now? And so what this leads me to believe, and I might be wrong, is that he might just not put everything he has into the project because maybe he's not fully convinced that that is actually what he wants to do. Might be wrong here, but that's what it sounds like to me.
Years on paper and evolving them over time. Sometimes there comes a spark which motivates me to work more intensely on one specific concept and start a little prototype in Unity even. If you've got that spark on one of your ideas, I would really advise you to go ahead and just start working on it. Even if it seems way too big at first, you never know where your creativity takes you. Building a game is so incredibly hard that you really cannot afford to build it on an idea you're only half passionate about. So far, I haven't quite found my next sparkling idea, but I do have several promising prototypes. So hopefully it's only a matter of time.
So I guess he's just prototyping right now, thinking of what to do. Okay.
Until then, have fun creating and hopefully see you soon with a brand new game dev journey.
Bye-bye. Now, okay. Good video, I guess, but what I'm missing
to analyze
is, well, why didn't he go into the negative review? The one negative review he had. We could take a look at the other reviews. 50% of the time, my character would not grab a ledge. Number one, he didn't answer here at all. He didn't tell him, no, actually that's how it is. There might be a bug here. And I don't know, the game itself is well thought out entertainment. You have to think carefully, which makes the game funny. Thumbs up to the publisher, very enjoyed. Kind of like the big challenge. It was a tough process, even though sometimes it was a tough process. So YouTube video definitely deserves much more recognition. So far I've played much, but controls seem tight. Posted on May 19th, yeah. And you stopped, so that is a bad sign. He stopped after 0.8 hours. He didn't even manage to play 1 hour, so I haven't played much. Yeah, that's a worrying sign. Even if this is an upvote, that would be a worrying sign for me. But he knows that, right? Many people quit at the very beginning. So this guy played an hour. Just 1 hour, but it's a really great game. If it's a great game, you would play more, bro. So you can basically discard this. But maybe there's more. That's awesome. It has some flavors. Platforming is really difficult. So it's already really difficult early on. Okay, no coyote time. Or the control is a little... So this is where we learn a little bit more. Guys, have you ever done a 2D game like Celeste? You guys remember when we made the Celeste tutorial and we built our Celeste clone? You still have that in your mind? Coyote time. You want to know what that is? I'll show you. So essentially coyote time is when you walk off a ledge, you have some time after getting away from the ledge to still jump. That is basically a forgiveness mechanic that makes the game more enjoyable, but not more difficult. Not easier. Because you can still make the game very difficult, but it just feels, it's not bullshit. You're wrong. You're totally wrong. This mechanic, paired with other mechanics that you can see here, make the game, it's not pandering to skill issue. You need to play Celeste in order to understand that. Animal has that too, to some extent. Every game, every platforming game, in my opinion, needs this mechanic. Because this is what people say, right? People say it is frustrating. It is difficult. It doesn't feel difficult because it is not difficult because the game is actually difficult, but it is not forgiving tiny mistakes. Celeste is difficult. Yeah, it is. It is a difficult game. It is, totally. I came up with this concept on my own 20 years ago. I thought it was a hack back then, but it was necessary. Yeah, let Mr. Real Super Cool, a developer of PogoStuck, tell you. The frames you see on the display are in the past, so you have to adjust for it. It's fun to be difficult. Guys, there's a difference. You have to understand this concept for game development, okay? Let me explain this to you. Difficult is not the same as tedious, okay? Coyote time is not making the game easy. It is making the game less tedious. It makes it fun, but you can still make a difficult game with this. That is the big difference, okay? Please understand that difference. It's really important. Most of these guys' reviews talk about how the game is difficult. They leave very early on. Well, it looks like the game is just clunky. Why do I think that? Well, because that's what this guy says here. 50% of my time, my character would not grab a ledge, and I would fall to my death. Well, is that tedious? A bug? Is that how it's supposed to be? You have to be pixel perfect? This guy didn't like it at all. And that's 0.6 hours. So all of the other ones saying that the game is hard, maybe it's tedious, but they don't know that it's tedious because they don't understand these game development concepts. The guy that with the negative reviews is also just one person. Yeah, but the stats on the video say that all of his players, the majority of his players quit after 20 minutes. And every single review talks about how the game's difficult. And then every single review that you see, apart from one review, 1 out of 6, has an hour or less playtime. So it is the majority of players that find the game difficult, but some of them don't understand that it's tedious. And without looking at the review, Coyote Time, he didn't even go into like, what I don't like about the video, like it's a great video, I love these videos, but he didn't go into the reviews at all. One review says no Coyote Time, the other review is talking about the grappling hook. These are two mechanics in a game, bro. These are gameplay mechanics. Gameplay is king. Anyways, here's the video, guys. It's a good video. It's awesome to learn from someone else, you know, when they made a game. And if you guys have more of these videos, if you guys come across a similar video like this, please feel free to link that to me, because I think these are very interesting and important to look at, to understand, you know, learn from other people's mistakes.